All right, we are live. I always get excited to say, I don't know why I get so excited just to go live. I remember the first time I did a live episode, I was shook. I was scared. I ain't gonna lie to you. Because I'm a podcaster. I'm used to having that buffer. If I make a mistake, if I mess up, it's all good. However, going live is a different beast. And so, I don't know, we're about 12, 13 weeks in a row. Been doing this. I'm feeling a lot more comfortable in my shoes. Even though I don't have shoes on, because you know how it is. I'm in the house. But I'm feeling a lot more comfortable. And I just want to welcome everybody to the show. If you're out there, feel free to say hello where you're from. It's always good to chat it up initially. Now, we are going to be talking about recruitment, and specifically recruitment for a diverse pool. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because my good friend Jerod Phillips, excuse me, put some respect. Dr. Jerod Phillips is here with us today. We're going to be talking about this, so I'm looking forward to that. I see Dr. Bruce is here. Howdy from Kansas. By the way, if you listen to the podcast, Leading Equity, Dr. Bruce episode just came out, so make sure you listen to that as we talk about inclusive practices for our folks that are learning English in the process of doing that. It's a really good episode. You don't want to miss that. As always, I do want to remind you that this show is sponsored by the up-and-coming book, Leading Equity, Becoming an Advocate for All Students. And let me tell you something. I'm going to give myself a hand clap real quick. That is coming out in a couple weeks. I just actually got notified from the book distributor saying that they've already started sending out bulk orders. So if you're one of those schools or districts that ordered at least 50 books, you should be getting those next week. I actually had a couple schools that received their bulk orders today. Shipment of books. And I'm so excited. How they got books before I got the book? But either way it goes, I'm excited to be able to share this. So if you haven't already grabbed the pre-order, it's available. It should arrive in your home in a couple of weeks if you order on Amazon. But again, if you get the bulk orders, it should come a lot sooner. Hit me up if you want more information on that. Now, got through all the pleasantries. We are going to bring on my special guest. Dr. Jerod Phillips is a proud husband and father of 2 daughters and 1 son. Dr. Phillips is a principal at the elementary level in Delaware. So without further ado, I am going to bring on my good friend, Dr. Jerod Phillips.
What's going on? My guy, how's it going?
That was fun. Good to have you on. Now, I've been on your show. Matter of fact, let's do this. I read just 2 sentences of your bio, but that obviously is not going to tell the whole picture. So I'd love for you to start us off by sharing a little bit about yourself and what you currently do.
Well, yeah, you read the first part, the most important part, family man and school leader, educator. Been in education for quite a while. So what I love to do is just connect with kids, connect with families, and just help people. And I'm always a learner. So you can see me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, conferences. That's just what I do because I never want to get complacent. I always want to try to grow and learn from everybody, just like I've learned from you down throughout the years. And principal, elementary level, grades 1 through 5. Love what I do here in Delaware, and we're just connected and trying to take kids to a whole nother level.
I love that. Now I got to ask a question because you said you're an elementary principal. What brought you there as opposed to secondary?
Well, all my teaching career was in secondary, and even my first 2 years as assistant principal was in middle school. But the district I'm currently in, well sought after, and I'm like, they're growing. Like maybe I can get there and do what I'm doing even at a larger scale. And elementary was where I landed, and I love it. But elementary kids, like they you can just like you build a relationship with them. Like you walk in a room, they like treat you like you LeBron or something. Like they can disrupt the whole lesson. Just stop like, hey, Dr. Phil. Like you feel bad, but it's a great feeling because they rally around you. Like ain't nothing like elementary.
You know what? You're exactly right. I remember my principal days. I was a principal at a private school, so we went from preschool to, it was weird because we went up to the 10th grade. We didn't go all the way through 12th. It was like basically pre-K to 10. And yeah, I remember the little ones. You walk in a pre-K class, you walk in first grade class, kid, go, oh, that's Mr. Eakins. Like you're a celebrity, you're a local celebrity at the school. And like you say, I mean, you learn to, you love the kids, their families, and you get to watch them grow up. I think this conversation is really important, especially because when we think about the importance of a young child being able to see someone that either looks like them or share some common backgrounds or even speak some of the languages that they speak. But we have to be a little bit more intentional when it comes to our practices of hiring. When we look at nationally across the board, I believe it's our teaching staff or educators, I want to say it's like 84, 85% white, and we don't have a lot of representation of color. So I want to start off by kind of getting your take as far as why do you think diversity in our applicant pools or diversity when it comes to our staff at our schools is so important?
It's important because for one thing, a lot of our kids, depending on their ethnic background or just their family dynamics, they may not know what success looks like. So if I'm a Black boy and I'm 8, 9, 10 years old, and outside of my family, I've never saw anybody in school that looks like me and actually doing something at a high level, I may think, oh, that's unattainable. Like this is not what Black men grow up to do. And it gives them a distorted sense of reality. And when they have educators in the building that look like them, there are some cultural things that they can connect with, as well as being able to like have somebody to look up to and be like, hey, I want to be like him. I want to be like her. It's critical because also that minority educator actually can help their colleagues out as well with areas of like, hey, I'm quite not getting through to Jerod and I don't understand. And they can, go through some things, some troubleshooting. They can peel some layers apart and help their colleagues, learn some cultural things that they may need to grow in. And that's causing the disconnect between them and the child or them and the parents, because it's a different ball game when you're dealing with parents from different cultures. Because just like I know in my school we have a huge Indian culture and they are real big on education. So I know that if their kids are academically struggling, I, along with the teachers, need to be on top of that, because bringing home like low grades or not being successful or not even attempting is not what they do. So knowing that and I'm still working on it. I got to go here. I know I have a huge Indian culture, Indian population. So last year we had a lady that was from that culture substituting in our building, and the way kids gravitated to her when she was in the building, I'm like, man, I got to get her a job in here some kind of way. But then another school scooped her up. But it was just those kids lit up because they saw, like, okay, I've been going to school here in America since kindergarten. Now I'm in third grade and I see somebody building that look like me and they're substituting in my classroom and I can have them conversation. Like it was a game changer.
Okay. So unfortunately you weren't able to pick her up. Like you said, she was taken, she was taken. You had the number 1 draft pick that year. So
right.
So, but how are things? So you saw the difference when just having a sub that identify with a lot of your students, just having that in your school building made such a difference. Have you since been able to recruit or be able to bring in Indian staff at all to further support your school?
I got close with one, and I know she's still going through some things to try to get a position and trying to, because, and that's another thing. legislate, and this is out of my realm, legislatively, because I know I got one candidate that interviewed, and I've had some conversation with her when it comes to like paperwork. Um, they make it challenging for those that come to this country and they got a master's degree,
Yeah.
and have been doing like this one candidate has been like what we would have needed her to do. She was doing that in India for years in a school and in the community, but get over here and the paperwork stuff, like and we had students of her culture that their parents would have scooped her up in a heartbeat to do some outside tutoring, like or after school. And it's like all right, we as a system, we got to find some kind of way how the same way I can, if I decide to pick up and come to go be a principal in Indiana, that paperwork is not going to be that challenging. Right. So we gotta kind of, that's going to hinder not just principals, that's going to hinder districts with hiring as well and trying to get them in that applicant pool, because they're going to be handcuffed with red tape, and that's not their fault.
The thing about it is you can argue that Indian education, it could rival what we got going on in the United States, especially with everything we got going on in the United States. So it's disheartening to hear that you have someone with a master's degree who's been doing the work that you, like you said, exactly what you need done. But there's so much red tape that they have to go through that unfortunately some of those candidates we lose out on because of the standards or the reciprocity rules and regulations is different. And we see this all the time. We see doctors, we see lawyers, they come in from various countries, but it don't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything once they come to the United States. Oh, you still got to get a new license, or your practice doesn't count. All your experience doesn't count. And it's, oh man, it sucks, Jerod. So thank you for sharing that.
That reminds me of when I was an 8th grade math teacher. I had a student where he was telling me his whole background. He came from India, and he's like, my dad was like the best lawyer over there. Then came over here, and dad and his uncle ended up opening a tire shop and just started building that up from the ground because couldn't practice law over here. Like it's just it's crazy.
It's crazy. Okay, so let's do this. I've had conversations with principals, for example, and they'll give me a reason why, and I'll look at their staff, and we're about to work together. I'm going to do some training with them, and I always ask, what is your student demographics? And they'll share the different demographics. We're 50% here, we're 60% there, and then I say, what's your teaching demographics? Oh, well, our staff is 80-90% white. Okay, so I always ask, what's your plan? Are you planning to diversify your teaching, your staffing? Because you just told me you're 60% here, but your staff looks this way. So what are we doing? And I get these excuses, Jerod. Oh, well, we can only hire from our teacher candidate pool that has already been vetted from our district and things like that. So, and that's all we had to go by. I want to know what your take is. I love, like, how would you respond if you were me? How would you respond in that type of situation where you're talking to a principal, asking them why they, what are they doing to get more diversity in their staff pool, and they give you that excuse, well, I'm limited to just the candidates that are listed in our district?
I would say the HR department kind of already done their due diligence homework. So let's just say you got an applicant pool of 30, been vetted. District office tells you this is what you got to pull from. That's when you got to roll up your sleeve and say, okay, I know what students are sitting in my building. Now I see no diversity in these 30. So now what I need to do is get a diversity of thought process, a diversity of ability, or diversity of where they've taught. And I'll give some examples. Okay. So if I'm looking at an applicant pool of 30, I need to start going through each one with a fine-tooth comb and say, okay, there's no diversity here. So let me look and see has any of them taught the populations that are predominant in my building or that my current staff struggles to reach, and somebody that could actually be a go-to and that could actually help elevate us. So then I'm looking there, okay, ooh, I have a huge Black population, but I see that this person has taught in a building with a demographic just like ours. Okay, let me do a little bit more. Let me go down and see if they put there where they went to high school or college at. Oh, they went to a HBCU. We got a huge Black population, but they're white. Oh, they went to high school in such and such, Buffalo, New York. Oh, let me look that up. Then you look up and you see that they went to a predominantly Black high school. This is a white applicant. So now let me at least bring them in for an interview to see what they have in the tank, because they went to high school, they went to college, and they've worked in atmospheres where they were in actually the minority. So they're going to have a different thought process and a different respect for when they come in and how to reach those kids. And not saying that person is going to be the best one for the job, but that's how you get them to the table and have that conversation. And when they come into the building, even though you're not getting the diversity in culture and race, but you're getting diversity in mindset. Yeah. And that's somebody that you can use later on for an interview panel, because they're going to think differently than what you currently have.
Now, what type of questions should I ask if I say, let's just say I'm in that situation. Okay, so I pull from the 30, I grab my top 4 out of that, and they all are white candidates, but I did my vetting and I saw that there's some sort of connection where they could be, could be a good fit for my school. What type of questions do I need to ask to maybe help me make that decision?
So one of the questions I would be upfront with putting out there, these are the demographics of my school, and then ask a couple scenario questions. So ask some scenario questions around, okay, if my staff or our building is struggling with the Black population or the Indian population or the white population that comes from that side of town, as our Ken Williams would say.
Yeah,
we think of some scenarios that we have not responded the greatest in, and we put that scenario, of course, not use student names, we put that scenario out there in the question and see how they answer it, or see out, not just answering it. I like when they tap into some experiences, because in an interview, you just can't come off the cuff and make up something like it shows. So if you throw those questions up there and somebody just boom, jump right into it, and you kind of gotta like, oh, they going over time because they getting into it, then you know you might got something. Because it's not all about like the canned answer, but just seeing what they got in the tank.
So if they're not giving you that, well, I'm just going to do my best and I love all kids, and I recognize that, oh, there's a challenge and I'm just going to connect with them and create a relationship. Like, all the general question, the answers that they think that we want to hear.
Book study.
Yeah. But if they actually have like examples, hey, I had a situation similar to this, or I remember when I was doing my student teaching, blah, blah, blah. If they can actually provide some tangible evidence as opposed to just some basic, like you said, textbook. I just read Zaretta Hammond's book. Oh, I just read Sheldon Eakins' book. And so now I got these talking points, but they got to give you a little bit more than that.
And another thing, even if they don't, if the answer they give shows that they still need some work in that area, but if some kind of way they allude to the fact of they knew they struggled in that area with either Hispanic or Black or low income white students, and they allude to the fact of they reached out to somebody to help them because they knew that was a struggle, that shows that they're coachable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So like you want that. Like if I can't get diversity, I want somebody that's coachable, somebody that's not gonna, if we have Dr. Eakins in for a equity PD, I ain't got to worry about that person just sitting there trying to go through the motions, to just ready to get out of there. The person that's going to be engaged, trying to actually learn, holding Dr. Eakins afterwards, asking questions. That's how you really change the tide, even if your applicant pool isn't as diverse as you want it.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so to me, it sounds like we can get rid of that whole argument or
Oh,
excuse, if you will,
absolutely.
that we only had white candidates available in our pool. Now, are there some other things that we can do to be a little bit more intentional if we're looking specifically for color match, if you will, between our students and our staff?
All right. So I like dealing with absolute. So I'm gonna just say, you gotta be recruiting the HBCUs. Like I know me, with our growing Indian population, I've seen that there are some colleges in New York and Boston that a lot of are Indian students that populate over here and then go to college. That Boston, New York area, they go to college there. So I know if I want to get some Indian candidates, I need to be tapping into those beans of education in colleges to put it out there, get them to some recruiting events. When our district posts jobs, sending those off, just being intentional in that way. But HBCUs is key. Another thing, I can't speak for secondary, but I can speak for elementary. I know our local HBCU and some in our region, they really don't promote their students coming out of there being dual certified. So as a school leader, anytime that I meet any candidate from one of those schools or somebody that works there, I'm telling them, hey, before they walk across that stage, make sure that they got that spec ed cert too. Make sure they're dual certified, because if they try to come, not saying we won't hire them, but just with the ever changing needs, it makes it challenging to hire a lot of candidates that aren't dual cert. Because let's say if I got 5 second grade classrooms and only 2 of them are dual cert, and the way our area is growing and people moving in, if during the summer, bam, I get hit with 10 new students in second grade and some of them got IEPs, that's making for a very taxing paperwork year and workload for 2 of them teachers, where I've hired more teachers not dual certified, and I do have to have a due diligence to be able to spread that out, because then I can make the class sizes smaller and kids are getting more individualized attention. But we got to be letting the HBCUs know, and all schools for that matter, in the climate we're in, you got to be dual cert. Got to be. And
Yeah.
I can't speak for secondary, but elementary, you got to be.
Got to be okay. Now, I would add Hispanic serving institutions as well.
Yes.
Would be a good source. I know there's our folks in California that they don't have close access to HBCUs. However, they may have. I'm pretty sure they'll have Hispanic serving institutions out there as well. If it's a matter of geography,
Mm-hmm.
so let's just say I am in I live in Idaho, and we ain't got no HBCUs out here, right? So let's just
True.
say let's say geography is an issue. Are there some other, like, because off the top of my head, I'm thinking, well, we could still Zoom with College of
Yep.
Ed at certain schools, like Howard, for example, right? I could hit up Howard University and say, hey, can I just Zoom with some of your seniors, some of your candidates, some of your folks that are doing student teaching? I need STEM, or I need whatever area I need. Can we Zoom in? And you could do a virtual interview that way as well. But again, you have to be willing to make those connections and partnerships with these institutions.
No, I've done it. When I was at my prior district and in this one, um, music teacher jobs rarely come open.
Yeah.
Our music teacher in my current school, she moved out of state, and in my prior district, she had got a promotion. So what I did, knowing that those jobs are hard to come by, I went online and looked at the schools within the Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina area, and looked at the diversity. And I just basically cold called the deans, and one of and I looked and see which professor was the most tenured, and I cold called both of them, and just told them what we had, gave them the link. We got a couple of applicants. I think it shocked them because they ain't used to that. But I'm like, hey, all you can do is not respond or say you don't know. But I'm gonna reach out and try to
Yeah.
find some diversity.
That's how I ended up in the Virgin Islands. First I didn't look for a teaching job when I finished school. I had a pretty decent job at a call center. I was set, and I didn't
Wow.
look all summer. All summer went through. I didn't even apply for nothing. Like I was like, I'm good. I'm good. And then they changed some things at my job, and then I'm like, oh shoot. But it just so happened that the superintendent from the school that I ended up working at had a son that was coming into the same college. And so he asked the dean of College of Ed, hey, I need a history teacher. Do you got any recommendations? And that's how things worked out. But again, it was him taking the initiative. He knew that he needed a history teacher. This was at a HBCU, and he reached out to the dean, and that's how I got connected. And next thing I know, I'm in the Virgin Islands.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's possible. It's definitely possible. But again, we have to be intentional. Now, Jerod, I could say this, and arguably, I would say this. Folks are probably watching this and say, well, Jerod is a person of color. It's a lot easier for him to recruit people of color. How do you respond in those? Like, how would you respond if someone came at you with that?
That's not always the case. Because sometimes institutional dynamics can come into play. Like if I'm in an organization and the outside, if I'm a black man or black woman, person of color, and I'm a school leader, and I'm at an organization where, whether it be a right, wrong, or different, the perception is historically you don't hire people of color, then I'm already behind the gun because like, I hear what Dr. Phillips saying, but I know my big brother tried to work there for years and never could get in, and that's why I say it still could be a challenge, and it's on us. It's on us school leaders, because the district can get this amount of applicants in a pool, but we're the ones boots on the ground actually doing the hiring. So the community and surrounding communities got to actually see us at the building levels making that good faith effort, and we can make it look better for us systemically for our district and our surrounding area. But yeah, that with that question, yeah, that's not always the case, because depending on how you grow up, or the trauma that you face growing up in whatever neighborhood or background you are, even though they may be a black man, I'm a black man, they may be looking at me with a side eye like, okay, what game is he running? Like, everybody where I'm from ran game on me. What game is he running? I'm just talking real. So it's not always the case.
Yeah, it's not always easier. I guess at the end of the day, people think, oh, well, it's easier for people of color to talk about race or to do these kind of things. However, sometimes as people of color, the
It's
microscope is on us a lot harder than our white counterparts. And so not only are we dealing with the hiring stuff, but we got to be on point for other things that maybe some of our colleagues don't have to necessarily worry about. So it's we think as a whole, all the responsibilities of a principal, school leader, or a building leader, all of the responsibilities that comes along with it. Hiring is just one piece, right? HR is just one part of that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's easier. So okay, let me ask you this question then, because I'll hear people say, oh, well, when you're doing these quote unquote diversity hires, you're taking away from other qualified white staff by giving the jobs to these people of color. How would you respond in that type of situation, Jerod?
I would say let's unpack that, because here's my thing. If I thought a blanket statement of, no matter what, I want the best candidate for the job, the best candidate in front of kids. Here's my comeback to that. Okay, if you got 10 openings and all of them are white, you mean to tell me a minority candidate out of 10, the minority candidate never was the best one ever out of 10? Like, that's where like the eyebrow become raised. It's like, are you really digging deeper? And it's not taken from a candidate that's not a minority, but a lot of times that minority candidate may, depending on what your building needs. Okay, you may think that somebody lost out, but in the long run, this was the best person for the job. Because sometimes you look at surface level like, okay, we went with the black, we went with the Hispanic, or we went with the Indian candidate, and they only had 3 years of experience, but this person had 10. But that third year person may have some other experiences that can help elevate their colleagues where that 10 can't. So if that one candidate's 10, they may have the years in, and on the surface level, you think, okay, they're more experienced, so we got to go with them, put them in front of kids. But they may be that person may be a minimalist, where that third year minority candidate is hungry. Gonna come in there, it's not gonna come in there about the status quo, gonna be professional, respectful, and when they see their colleagues that don't look like them struggling with students from their culture, like, hey, let me help you out here. Let me try this. Send them over to me. Let me talk. Like, where you can't put a price tag on that. Like, those are things that you really need in your school.
Listen, I'll say this too, and I think you brought up some really good points, and we even got some comments coming in, some excellent points, and I second that as well. But at the end of the day, sometimes we stick so much on the academic side of things. Oh, this teacher knows, like you said, 10 years of experience. They know all the content, but we don't know if that teacher's been teaching the same thing for the last 10 years and they're stuck in their ways and not willing to make some change or accommodations based off of the new classroom demographics that they're going to be experiencing. But there's also that relationship piece that we don't always talk about, Jerod. And I think when we look at the whole picture, right, we're not just looking at data, resume, boom, hit this point, that point, but we're actually looking at this person as a human being as a whole. How are they going to connect with the academic and the social side of things? So when we try to say, oh, you're not giving the best candidate the job, or you are taking away from us, but you have to look at the whole picture. This person grew up in this neighborhood. This person is black, and I have 70% of my students are black. So why, like, the connection and the opportunities for them to create these relationships, I think, are way better than us to try to focus and say, oh, well, I think this person is strong. And honestly, Jerod, I'm going to get off my soapbox in just a moment.
Because I'm going to piggyback on something you said too.
The thoughts are in my head now. Honestly, at the end of the day, I don't like when you see a person of color and it's automatically assumed they're a diversity hire. Because subtly, that still is upholding white supremacy. And whether you want to say it, people want to say it out loud or not, but that is essentially the message that you're giving people. Oh, so these people of color, we automatically assume they're less than, they're inferior. The school they went to, their experience, who they are, is inferior because the best candidate had that 10 years plus a PhD or whatever it is. So go for it. You say you want to jump in.
See, now you kind of hit on it, like with that relationship piece, because like you said, you looking at all the other stuff, but that third year candidate, okay, you bringing them in as a 5th grade teacher, you got 5 to 10 black, Hispanic, poor white kids that are running them up. Nobody wants to take the time out to them, but you look up and that candidate is the one on a Saturday at their Pop Warner games. You look up, they're the one staying after school tutoring, where that 10-year one going on home. You can't put a price tag on that stuff or experience on that, because what are those 10 kids always going to remember? Because when they do try to run them up next week, that teacher go across the hall and be like, really? This is what we doing? This is what we doing? And they can actually have that dialogue. It's like, yeah, he was at our game and he was over there talking to my mom and dad. So all right, no, they're gonna find this out. So let me straighten up. Like, that's the stuff that always don't come out on resumes.
Nope, it doesn't come out on resumes. And you know, I would also add that when we think about the best candidate for the job, I think we can all agree that that's what we want. But again, we have to look beyond the resume, and is this person also not the best candidate, but also the best fit as well? Let's see, a comment just came in. Those are invaluable attributes. Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. McCove in the house.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, Dr. McCove. So, okay. All right. So I don't want folks to leave today's conversation without some tangible strategies. I think you did a good job by bringing up, we need to definitely tap into our HBCUs as a resource. We need to also look at our local pool and see, okay, if we do have to pull from our local pool, but what kind of connections can we make with our those potential candidates and our school's demographics? Have you heard of cluster hiring? I'm just curious if you're familiar with that, because all right, we bring in that one or two staff that comes in, but then how do we keep them there as well? So are you familiar with cluster hiring?
Yeah, school me on that one. We might use
Okay.
a different terminology.
Okay. You know nowadays now someone coined some term, but it literally is the same thing as somebody else's coin. So okay, so basically cluster hiring is, let's say you have 6 spots at your school. Let's say you got 2 counselors, an AP, and a few teachers that are all of these are the positions that I need to hire over the summertime. And being intentional, and you're thinking about the student demographic. So let's say, for example, your school is predominantly Indian students, and so I have 6 spots. I'm intentionally going to try to hire 6 best candidates with the idea that I want Indian staff to reflect my student population. So you get 6 in, as opposed to just getting that one person in. And so that one Indian staff is amongst all the other staff, and then they don't feel included or welcome. So the clustering hiring is more of an intentional thing where you're getting multiple folks into your school or into your organization or whatnot, with that intentionality of not only are they going to be a good connection or good fit for our school, but they're also going to be able to hopefully be able to connect with each other. And that might elongate the amount of time that they stay at the school, as opposed to you're more likely to get a one and done or a couple years and done if you're only getting one person in versus getting multiple staff in. So that's what I meant by cluster hiring.
No, I actually like that strategy. I just think you really gotta be intentional, and
Mm-hmm.
you really, just like with any cluster hire, if you hire 6 people at the same time and you really want them to bond, just be intentional about keep bringing them back together as a whole, as for frequent check-ins. Also looking at the dynamics, making sure that no friction really starts within them, because you lose one, then you lose the rest of them, because of friction, and one get disgruntled, or something happens with outside of that cluster with one of them. One leaves and says, well, we might as well follow Sheldon's going over there. We might as well all follow Sheldon as
Yeah.
well. So really, and then once they're in there, not just saying, okay, we clustered, we got 6 in, but really building them up and tapping into them into their strengths, as well as being very strategic about, they are here to help us reach all students. So we are all one team, and giving them responsibilities and chances to prove their own leadership within their own right. So not just like, oh, they got us here, but it's like, I really don't do anything but teach and go home. Nah, you got to make sure that you are intentional about them being a fabric of the culture. But I actually like that strategy.
It's not mine. I don't have the research in front of me, but I wrote a paper published a paper a few years back, and that was part of the research. I wish I knew the person's name off the top of my head, but I like I said, I did that a few years ago. You know how you do some research and okay, you moved on, you done something else, and I can't remember the person.
That's how it is. That's how it is.
Yeah. Just like Dr. Scott said, it's like a cohort. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they do it a lot in college, recruiting students into like certain majors, because what would happen is you recruit, and then you get that one student of color or whatnot, and then they're all by themselves and they never see anybody else, and then they transfer out. So same rules can apply for if you're hiring, but that's where I saw a lot of that, is a cluster recruitment for higher education. Now, I wanna move over to a conversation regarding because I kind of want to talk about the retention, and I know that sometimes, and maybe you've felt this as well. But sometimes our diversity hires, and when I talk about diversity, I mean racial hires, often puts more work on those individuals. So maybe this person's bilingual or trilingual, and so we recruit them to come to our school, and then they end up being a translator in addition to their normal teaching jobs. Or this person comes in and they end up having to coach a certain sports or whatever because they have that skill. Like, how do we? So we've recruited, but what are some ways that we don't overwork or burn out our diversity hires? What kind of suggestions would you have?
One, you got to hold other people accountable. And I just know just from what just even reading and research and just being out here, you can get burnt out. Like if you're the only minority in a building, and anytime some friction comes up with with minority parents, like you the only one that they go to calm them down, or like try to meet them halfway, like that can get exhausting. And I think one of the main things is we're there. The main thing is we're in a building for is so that students learn and learn at a high level. So we need to make sure that that person feels value, where they're actually bringing a lot of instructional value to the school, and not just used as, oh, this is a huge gap we got. Nobody else wants to really learn it, but since you know it, we're gonna throw everything on you. We kind of got to get out of that, as well as when we know we need more of. If Sheldon is the only person in the building, Dr. Eakins is the only person in the building that can do this, we know that when other openings come open, we need Dr. Eakins on the interview panel, so that the things we may not see that is needed to help fill this gap, Dr. Eakins might can peep it out in the interview panel, like, nah, not this person. I know what I need, and this is what I know what I do, and I know how I've gotten here. This is what we really need. So using that person as a resource, not just for getting stuff like that done so that other people or the majority of the people in the building don't got to deal with it, but also you leveraging their voice to get other people in when the time comes for an opening. Because those people need to be on interview panels, because if they're the difference maker in that one area and you know you need more of that in the building, don't just say, well, we got him, so let's fill these other needs. No, let's duplicate that so that way we don't burn him out and he leaves.
Yeah. Because it depends on the school, but it costs like thousands and thousands of dollars to replace a staff member. So you're better off being able to keep them on, but not giving them all these additional responsibilities, especially without any sort of compensation. A lot of us will do things just because we have the mindset that, if I don't do it, then who will do it? I'm the only person. So my students come up to me, that have shared the same identities. And so they come up to me during lunch, they come up to me during recess, they come to me after school, before school. So planning period, all these things. And again, these are things that I'm doing because I want to support, so I'm not complaining, but these, like you said, they can drain you, especially when we start taking home some of those like some of the stuff that our kids share with us. And like that weighs on us on our way home and at night, and we're struggling with like dealing with that. And so those are just some things that we need to be mindful of when it comes to our school leadership. So thank you.
Yeah. That's
Jerod, this has been a fun conversation, but we're going to start wrapping things up. So folks, if you have any questions for Jerod, feel free to pop that in the comments. But I'd love for you to share maybe your final point that you want folks to take away from today's conversation.
Main thing is always, like, when a opening comes up in your building, always keep an open mind, even when, because I've had to tell myself this, and I've been blown away in all with, if I had went with my first mind of already being locked in on, after I screened the applicants, already locked in on a person who wasn't a minority candidate, because I think, I guess there's 2 points. Another point is, a minority leader isn't always opening and looking at applications saying, I gotta make sure I get a black person here. Nah, we gotta make sure we get the best people in front of kids. But when that opening comes open, I just encourage educators to keep an open mind and dig a little deeper and not just look at the small things of, like, you do see a couple minority applicants and you see that they may have switched jobs a couple times in the past several years. Like, bring them in and have that as an interview question, and you'll find out that they had to in order to keep moving up the ladder because nothing was available in their current district. So they gotta, you just gotta like look at the whole and not just be pigeonholed on one person or just one attribute.
One person or one attribute. I love that. Who's going to make the best fit for the school, the culture, the demographics, everything, that's the current staff, and be able to connect with the families that are stakeholders within the school, I think, bottom line. So thank you for that. Jerod, if we got some folks that want to connect with you, if they want to listen to your voice every now and then, what are some of the best ways to connect with you?
They can connect with me on Twitter, Jerod Phillips 0722. I'm on Instagram as well, and podcast that I host with 3 fellow Delaware educators in Doug Tim, Dina Lowe, and Stephen Wilson. And our podcast is called Speaking Educationally. And we actually started it before even COVID, before George Floyd. We just saw some things that we wanted to change. And like, even if we only have 3 or 4 listeners, we just gonna get on and talk equity and all things education. And that's how it happened. So you can check me out there.
All right. Well, once again, Jerod, it has truly been a pleasure. One of these days we got to meet up in person. We're gonna make that happen soon. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, folks. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Phillips. Very eye-opening. I believe he gave some really good points as far as some ways that we can be more intentional. Some takeaways for me was, the excuses of, we only had this or we only had that available to choose from. If that is your situation, keep in mind, what are some connections that I can make with this potential candidate and our school? Were they raised in a similar neighborhood as some of our students? Do they have some experience working with students that are similar to mine? Like, those are some of the questions that we can ask. Also, start looking into historically Black colleges, universities, Hispanic serving institutions as well. Make those connections, make those partnerships. If geography is an issue, we can always do Zoom. I mean, we're at a place these days where Zoom is pretty secondhand. And so hopefully you can be able to make those connections. But bottom line, we just need to be intentional. We have to be intentional with our practices. We can't just say we need this, but we actually need to actively be working towards creating that diversity. And again, diversity is not limited to just race. Okay, so we need to make sure that we are bringing in folks to the table that will match our school's energy and the community that we're serving. Remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You can't fly, then run. You can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Let's continue to be a voice in leading equity.